that today's webinar is going to be on how to maximize shop efficiency and billable hours. Okay, so on today's webinar, you know, one of the reasons why we were putting this together is I'm in shops all across the country all the time. I see a lot of different issues in shops, and really there is a lot of similar issues from shop to shop, no matter where I am in the country, compared to some individual needs. You know, some shops have needs for equipment in the shop, and but really the consensus across all shops, the same problem I see in most shops that I'm in, is the fact that they cannot find good technicians, right? So one of the things we want to go over today is billable hours and a few other things that can help us in the shop. So like I said, the biggest consensus across all shops is really finding help in the industry, finding qualified technicians. So I do have a background in the automotive industry. My father actually owned his own shop for many years, so I've seen the ups and downs of owning a shop. I've seen good years, I've seen bad years, and I've seen a lot of the pains of running your own business. So hopefully we can touch on some of those today and kind of help everybody see some of the things that I've seen across the country and ways that we can help streamline some of the things that you guys are doing. So, okay, so as a shop owner, what is our main goal? Obviously, our main goal as a shop owner or as any functioning shop is to increase our revenue. Okay, so in today's presentation, I want to go through a few different ways that we can recognize that we can make some money in the industry as far as streamlining our processes in the shop. So we want to maximize billable hours. Okay, that's everybody's goal here, right? Because as a shop owner, what are we really selling? We're selling time. So the expectation. So time obviously is money for us in a shop, okay? What we're selling, like I said before, is our time. It's our labor rate, okay? Yes, we do mark parts up, 30, 40%, we make some money on them, but really our bread and butter is our time. So what we try to do is really streamline processes in the shop and help you guys make more money. So a seasoned technician should be producing a minimum of 10 to 12 billable hours per day. All right, and an apprentice technician should be producing a minimum of 4 to 6 billable hours a day. All right, now some of this can turn into, I threw this slide in here because really this is where we're talking about billable hours and unbillable hours, right? So the reality is a lot of times we see in shops and from my own experience as well, is the amount of time that we spend diagnosing vehicles, and there's plenty of times in shops, even shops that run efficiently, where you get a vehicle in there that is just a little bit tough to diagnose, right? So you end up spending a couple of hours on the car, 5-6 hours diagnosing the vehicle. You end up finding out what's wrong with the vehicle. You put a $75 part in it, and you charge your customer for 2 hours labor, right? So this is lost revenue. This is the lost money where we are trying to help you guys make that time up. So like I said, a lot of this comes from research and other things. So how a shop wastes time and money? Subletting, all right? So subletting is a huge thing, and it is something that I hear in most shops that I'm in. All right, a lot of times when I'm going through some issues and some pain points that most shops experience, a lot of guys tell me, oh, well, we sublet that out, right? And we're talking about mobile techs. We're talking about towing vehicles to the dealership, problems that you've never seen before. And this runs into things like programming the vehicle, like I said, problems you haven't seen, so you call in a mobile tech, and I've heard horror stories even with towing the vehicles to the dealer, right? You could run into issues where I've seen cars get damaged that were being towed to the vehicle, and these are your customers' cars. And a lot of guys, this is not really a way to run the business, right? It seems easy at the time because you don't have to deal with it. You get a tow truck to the shop, you tow it to the dealer, you let them handle the programming and everything else. But at the end of the day, this really isn't saving us any time or any money. So, it's good to keep things in-house. All right. Now, one of the other problems that we run into in the shop, and I will get into these a little bit more, is lack of service information. Okay. A lot of shops, they're using multiple outlets of information for their shops to run these diagnosis on these vehicles. Okay. And in a lot of cases, some shops have 3-4 different avenues that they are paying a monthly fee on to be able to get this information, okay? And still it lacks in a lot of cases on the information that you could actually find. A lot of it's generic, or it's just not correct information for that vehicle. Okay, another problem that I run into a lot and I see across the board is lack of brand specific expertise. Okay, now obviously in an aftermarket shop, for the most part, a lot of shops do have, some guys that came from the dealership and, they're very good on that brand. But really, when you're getting into brand specific expertise, it's not any technician knows every make, model, year, model vehicle that pulls up to the shop. No matter how good they are, that is very, very difficult to know all these different, especially when you get into these newer vehicles, these very complex vehicles with different CAN networks and everything else. No matter how good you are, you really do, running from brand to brand, they all have different issues, they all have different networks, and they all operate slightly different. So for us to learn all of these and to know all these off the top of our head is very difficult. Okay, and another problem that I do see is lack of proper diagnostic tooling. And again, this turns into the programming and certain vehicles that you can't work on, things that you turn away because you don't have the proper tooling to be able to do these vehicles. So you kind of shy away from them and you really kind of push them either to the dealer, or really what you're doing is pushing them down the road to your competition. So, we'll go through a few different ways on how we could even help with proper tooling to diagnose these vehicles. All right. I can't afford to pay the qualified technicians that I need. Okay. Now, normally if you're paying a qualified technician, this is somebody freshly out of an IT school, or this is somebody who's leaving the dealership and you're trying to snatch them up for your business. Now, again, a lot of times you run into this problem where you have a guy leaving a shop, or a dealership rather, and he's very good in that brand. He's not necessarily good in other brands. You get guys that have come out of a Euro shop, pretty good on Euro cars. You get the US make cars, you get the Asian make cars, and so it's hard to jump from different manufacturer to manufacturer. So, and OE equipment is very expensive. Obviously, if we want all capability and to really be able to do whatever it is that we need to do in the shop, as far as being equipped to handle any make, model vehicle that pulls up to your shop, for you to be most equipped to be able to handle all these cars, it would require OEM equipment, which, as you guys know, is extremely expensive, especially even if you're using pass-through subscriptions for these manufacturers and you're not even using factory tools. Even just the pass-through yearly subscriptions tend to be extremely expensive. You start adding them all up across the board, you're spending a lot of money to have all of these capabilities. Okay. And when you spend too much time diagnosing vehicles, this is where we're losing the money. Okay, so we're going to get into a few different ways on how we could increase our revenue. So obviously, the easy way to put this is to do more and offer more. Okay, we have to reduce time spent and reduce unbillable hours. Okay, get more out of less experienced techs and give your techs the tools needed to succeed. Okay, now when we talk about reduced time, a lot of times you have all these different avenues to be able to do these diagnostics and to be able to, pull up wiring diagrams, research fault codes, but this is time spent, right? Reduce unbillable hours. Every time you have your technician who's being pulled off of a vehicle and he has to do his due diligence on, whether he's going through Identifix or ALLDATA, or he's just Googling YouTube, all these different avenues that technicians use these days to try to get to the answer, right? And they look at it as they're doing it themselves. They're accomplishing the jobs themselves, which I get it. Once you get involved in something, when you're diagnosing a vehicle, when you're working on a vehicle, it kind of turns into a little bit of a pride thing, and you want to see the job through, so you start doing your own research on it. But that's where the unbillable hours come in, right? When you got a guy sitting in front of a computer for an hour or two trying to pull information, whether it be TSBs or anything else, he's trying to hit some of the forums to see, common issues with these fault codes. This is time wasted. Even though it feels like you're not wasting the time because you're doing the research, you're doing your due diligence into fixing the vehicle, but at the end of the day, it is wasting time, right? So you want to get more out of less experienced technicians. And I'm going to get to later in the slideshow a little bit of how we can help out these less experienced techs, because you should be able to get max capacity out of all of your technicians. Okay, and we need to give our technicians everything they need to succeed. Okay. For us to be able to handle anything that comes into the shop, we really do need the proper tooling to be able to handle any issues. Again, this goes back to subletting out jobs. We don't want to do that. Offer more. A lot of shops that I go into, they specialize in certain brands and they like to stick to certain brands. Some shops only work on domestic vehicles, some only work on Asian, some only work on European. You know, a big thing I hear in a lot of the shops that I'm in is they cover mostly everything, but they won't touch Jaguar, they won't touch Land Rover, they won't touch, you know, the list goes on vehicles that they won't touch. And to me, that's craziness because, you know, all vehicles basically work the same. They're just slightly different. They work on different networks, right? There's nothing that pulls up to your shop that you should not be able to pull into your bay and work on. You know, and through some of our offerings, which I'll get into, like I said, this will expand your brand coverage, okay? Because there's no reason why you should be sending anything away. You got to remember one thing. Every time you're sending a customer away, you're sending them to your competition. You're sending them to the dealership. So, you know, and you have to expand your service offering and stop giving the competitors your money. You know, a lot of times I have, and I've experienced this where I've been to a lot of shops in one area, you know, and there's one guy in that area who has a lot of the tooling, right? He's got a lot of that OE equipment. He's got a lot of that programming equipment. And I'll hear from a lot of these same shops in the same area, you know, oh, I use so-and-so down the block. Yeah, he runs right over and programs it for me. Yeah, he charges me this much money. Yeah, it kind of stinks, but I don't have to deal with it. You know, and this guy's making all the money from all of his surrounding competitors, you know, and then he gets a hold of your customers, and what is that doing for you? You know, at some point we need customer retention, you know, and even for shops that only work on certain vehicles, you know, a lot of shops that won't work on European cars or shops that only work on European cars, you know, and I'll hear from them, oh, you know, yeah, I don't touch anything, I don't touch any domestic vehicles, you know, but it's all about customer retention at the same time, right? Because your customer who has that BMW or has a Mercedes-Benz that's coming into your shop and you're working on their car and their wife's got a Toyota or their son's got a Ford or whatever the case is, you know, and you want to be able to work on their cars as well. You know, you don't want to work on one person's car in the family. You want to be able to work on the whole family's car because all you need is for the other family members to start seeing another shop who's taking care of them and says, oh, yeah, don't worry, I can work on your BMW too. You know, that's a lost customer. So we try to stop that from happening. There's no reason why any shop shouldn't be able to handle any manufacturer that pulls up to their door. So how to increase revenue? If you can reduce a technician's time spent on an issue, you know, that will produce more billable hours, right? And that's when I get into, like I was saying before, you know, doing the research themselves and doing the programming themselves. And you know, this is time wasted in my eyes as far as for a shop. You know, so if you're going to do more billable hours. So I broke down, what I did here was I broke down some numbers for you guys to just kind of give you an idea of what it is that I'm talking about, right? So if you want to reduce the technician's time spent on an issue, so for example, if you have 4 techs, each tech is working 40 hours per week, right? So out of that, your average labor rate is $100 across, you know, I see across the country anywhere from $80 to $125 per hour on an hourly rate, right? So you figure an average is $100 an hour. We'll make it easy math, right? So if you have 4 technicians, they're producing 160 hours per week. So if you're billing for every hour that these guys are working, obviously it's not possible for us to increase your efficiency, but how many shops are actually running at 100% efficiency as far as what they could bill out, right? So if you're billing the whole 160 hours per week, you're looking at $16,000 in revenue, right? Now, for the technicians that are not hitting their full efficiency for the week, if we could increase them 10 to 15% in efficiency, which is possible, we can do it. You know, you're talking 4 to 6 additional billable hours or more per week per tech. All right, so that's a $400 to $600 increase in revenue per week. You know, times that by, and that's per tech. So you times that by 4 techs by 4 weeks in the month. You know, you can actually, if just adding those few hours a week per tech, at the end of the month, you actually increase quite a bit of revenue coming into the shop. Even small things, you know, saving an hour here and there is really profitable for the shop. You know, and I've done setups in shops where I've actually proven this to them, where I've actually set up pilots where I have pushed their techs to kind of work a certain way in the shop and to stop wasting a lot of that research time and everything else that they're doing. And I've actually been able to prove high volume shops and low volume shops that we've actually been able to increase their revenue through some of the ways that we can help them. So how to produce more billable hours, right? Save time by reducing the amount of tech research involved to diagnose vehicles. Again, this is, I know I kind of already hit on this already, but this is when we're pulling out Google and everything else that we have to do. The way I look at it when I'm running through, when I'm talking to a shop owner is, when you're talking about billable hours, you know, like I said before, a lot of guys, they want to get to the end result of a vehicle that they're working on their own. And I get it. You know, like I said, I've been in that situation before, and it almost becomes a pride thing, like you're going to fix the vehicle. You don't want to reach out and get help. But at the end of the day, your time is money. So usually what I tell a shop owner is, look, if you're running a diagnostic, because what we do is a little bit more than just giving you guys help on drivability issues. Okay, we are really here for anything. So when you talk about saving time by reducing the amount of research involved, that includes even just diagnosing the vehicle. So the way I tell shops, look, if you're 20-30 minutes into running a quick scan on the car, you know, you got your scan, you got your fault codes, and you start running through diagnostics on the vehicle. You're 20-30 minutes into a diag. You don't have a direction. You don't have a test plan. It's time to get some help, right? It's time to just get the car fixed. Anyone could stand in front of the car for enough hours and actually figure out what's wrong with it, but it's not efficient for us to do that. So save time by eliminating the need for technicians to do their own programming. Okay, this is another way to save some money. A lot of shops look at, you know, their capabilities with programming. They won't do certain programmings. A lot of shops I hear across the board, oh, we do Ford programming. They have a small amount of programmings that they do, and they think it's efficient for them to do it themselves. You know, and I've been down the programming road. I've done it myself. You know, this is what we do, and I've seen a lot of time wasted with it. You know, most of the time you're using some kind of a pass-thru device, you're using a laptop, you're using OE software, and really what ends up happening, you hook up to the vehicle, the computer needs an update, that needs an update, and, you know, you have to really kind of spend a lot of time just getting the vehicle prepared to do the programming. Once the programming starts, you know, you could be anywhere from 10 minutes to 3 hours to do a programming. So again, you know, when you got a tech, especially one of your main techs doing this, this is a huge amount of time wasted. Okay, so you want to reduce the number of techs working on a vehicle. Now, a lot of shops that I'm in, you know, and I'll even go to the next slide too, because you want to use your master tech more effectively by enabling other technicians to diagnose vehicles independently. Okay, a lot of times, in shops that I'm in, I see two different things happen. A lot of times the owner of the shop has one master technician, right? There's usually one guy in the shop who is the master lead technician, and then you have a few other people in there that are a little bit more green. They're more so, you know, changing parts and stuff like that. You got one guy really running around and doing the diagnostics. It's usually a master technician. In some cases, I see that it is the owner operator who's also doing a lot of the diagnostics. Now, in that case, it's, you know, it's very difficult for a shop owner to be running his business, dealing with customers, and to also be the guy who needs to hold all of his employees' hands and actually get out there and diagnose vehicles. You know, and I've met a lot of shop owners that is the way it works for them. And even to the point where I've said to them, well, you know, like, how do you get on with customers? What if you have to leave? And they'll say, you know what, my guys will kind of stand around until I get back to be able to help them work on vehicles, you know, unless he lines up work for them before he leaves. And same thing with the master technician. You know, if you have a one guy in your shop who is your master tech, he's very good. You know what? Let that guy make you money. You know, let him do his own diagnostics. Let him run his own work. You know, it's when you have all these green guys in the shop and your master tech is constantly being pulled off the jobs that he's working on to go and assist somebody else, right? To give somebody else a helping hand to basically, you know, help them figure out what's wrong with their, you know, so now you got two guys diagnosing a vehicle. This is not efficient for a shop to be running like this. You know, you need to let your master tech make you money. Give him the difficult problems, you know, give him the car with all the electrical issues and something that you really got to dig into, you know, something where somebody else would be completely lost on. But let him dig into that. Don't break his concentration. You know, let these other guys, you know, discover their own avenues and their own ways of getting these cars fixed. So how to produce more billable hours, okay? Stop subletting work to other shops. So again, I keep touching on this point because it is something that I hear in most shops that I go to. It's actually pretty shocking to me on how many shops sublet out work. And I think part of it is a lot of shops don't realize some of the services that are out there that can actually help you guys handle a lot of this stuff yourself and in-house. You know, and it's kind of one of the reasons why we wanted to put this together. I kind of wanted to explain to everybody how there are other things that we can do to help the shop other than, you know, we're not just a scan tool company. So how to increase the revenue? Again, do more, offer more, okay? We're going to come back to this again. So now, what if you could have a master technician for every manufacturer standing by in your bay, right? Because, I mean, at the end of the day, if you want to really properly diagnose these vehicles efficiently and quickly, a master tech for the manufacturer is the way to go, you know. But for us to be able to hire a master tech for every manufacturer, forget about it. I mean, the amount of money that would cost for us to have a master tech for every manufacturer in your bays is just not feasible, right? But what if you could have it? What if you could have a master technician for every manufacturer standing in your bay at any time that you need us? Okay, so IVS 360. This is one of the things that I wanted to touch on. And again, you know, I saw that there was a post on social media, and somebody had said, you know, is this going to be another sales pitch, or is this actually a video that we could take something away from? Now, I mean, I will say this. I feel like a lot of what I'm talking about on here, obviously, if you're a shop owner, you know this. You know, this isn't, I'm not telling you something that you've never heard before. Obviously, you guys know that you need billable hours. This is where we're going to make our money, right? So I wanted to touch on some of the other offerings that we have, because we're not here trying to sell you something. We're trying to help you solve problems. And a lot of people that work for this company, and a lot of our technicians, that really is their passion. You know, we really do have a passion for helping these shops get through their day-to-day and to keep these things in-house, because we really do understand what an aftermarket shop needs. A lot of our technicians are, you know, have been shop owners. They're all master techs from the dealership. So we have a lot of experience in this. And again, I just wanted to kind of touch on, get away from the scan tool part of it, right? So for IVS 360, we are the industry leading for technical support, okay? We have live brand-specific repair guidance from over 100 OE trained master technicians on US, Asian, and European makes, okay? Receive support from a master tech who specializes in the brand of vehicle you're working on. Our OE brand-specific experts will do the research for you so you can be more productive and move on to other work. So again, before, when I was saying, you know, when you're running a scan on a vehicle, you're 20, 30 minutes into a diag on it. If you don't have a direction, you don't have a test plan, stop wasting time, okay? Send in a ticket to us. Let one of our brand-specific technicians get on the tool with you guys and help you guys diagnose the car. This is not about, you know, taking anything away from the technicians who's working on it, you know, and like I say, you're not in this industry to be a hero. You're in this industry to make money, right? And again, we can all sit there and spend enough time working on this vehicle to where we can come to an end result with it, right? Put in a ticket though. I mean, pull another vehicle in the shop. You could be working on 2 cars at once. Submit the ticket on that car and move on to the next one. Wait for one of our brand-specific techs to get back on the phone with you and walk through your option, your diagnostics with you. Okay, so the complete diagnostic platform is to really supercharge your diagnostic strategy, okay? Drive Pro ES allows IVS 360 to remote directly into the vehicle system and seamlessly share data to complete a repair, okay? Now, what that means is, most of the time when one of our technicians will call you guys back, the way it works is they will usually just ask you for your tool number and they remote right into the tool, okay? Now, when they do that, they can actually hit the buttons, they can run through diagnostics, they can do actuations, they can see all of the live data. So now they're not asking your technician to go to certain pages, read certain things to them. You know, we can actually go in there and see it ourselves. Now, you guys can also see what we're doing in the tool as we're doing it. Even down to, we have dual cameras allowing the IVS 360 technician to see what you see in real time. So we could even turn cameras on this tool and we could actually physically, I can physically have one of my guys virtually in your bay, okay? He can virtually be looking at the same car. And we do use this feature a lot. You know, I've had some guys say to me, well, what's really the point of the camera? I mean, what is that really going to do for us? Well, in some cases, we've had people say, Well, you're trying to figure out what a module is, or a certain connector on a module or something like that. We could actually turn the camera on and see the module. We could see the connector that you have. Say we're going to help you scope something. I mean, we could literally turn the camera on and we can look at that connector with you and tell you what wire to grab, where to put the leads. We can help you guys, walk you guys even through scoping vehicles. Okay. OE licensed diagnostic software to get to the root cause of the issue on all major US, Asian, and European makes. So what that means is not only do you have the capability of having our master techs be able to come into these tools and help you guys walk through the diagnostics, but one thing that I think a lot of people don't know about is that we actually have capability with OE software off the back end of the tool. Okay. So our new tools actually do have a Cardac 3 DOIP built into them for J2534 programming, but it also allows us to run our OE subscriptions off the back end. All right, so say we're running into an issue with a vehicle. Now, I mean, we talked about some of these manufacturers out there now where we're seeing problems on all scan tools. It doesn't matter what scan tools you have in your shop, we just can't talk to the vehicle. So in those cases, we have you covered where we can actually remote into the tool and we can use an OE application on that vehicle to help you guys, run scans or whatever it is just to communicate to those vehicles. Because when we were designing this tool, I mean, let's face it, we said to ourselves when we all roundtabled this, we said, what does the industry need? The industry does not need another scan tool. The industry needs help. Okay, and it's really what our main goal was. Yes, we have a scan tool. Yes, we have software. But really, that's not our MO. That's not our thing. Our thing is really helping these shops diagnose vehicles and to give them the correct information. So the vehicle needs to be programmed. Now what? So we have a built-in remote assisted programming. Okay. Now, this again, like I said before, when you have a technician that's going to be doing the programming himself and you guys are, busting out your laptop and doing some updates and everything else. Now, on the Drive, we have the Drive Wrap, okay, which offers hassle-free programming. So really what it is, it's a remote programming where our technicians can remote into the tool and completely take it over. So the way it works is you would plug the tool to the vehicle, you walk away, you work on something else or deal with customers. We completely take it over and we do all the programming for you using our licenses and our subscriptions. Okay, now not only that, the nice thing about this is we also take the liability. Okay, so say something does go wrong on that vehicle in the middle of programming and we brick a module, and the module just crashes. We lose communication. We can't regain the communication to the module. We actually cover it. So we're taking that liability off you as well. And a lot of shops that I'm in, I hear, why don't you do any programming? Well, I heard horror stories. You crash a module, then I got to replace a, $2,500 module, and I don't want to take that on. So yeah, I get that, but now you don't have to worry about that because we're going to take it over for you, And again, get your tech off of this car doing the programming. Let us do the programming for you. Okay, and just real quick too, I mean, across the board, our programmings are 125 for remote programming. And I just want to touch on that because I've gotten some kickback from some shop owners when I'm in there and, and I hear the fact that, I could rent Ford site for the day for $40. And I get it, you can. And if if you're having a really slow day in the shop and you have the pass-thru device and, you don't mind buying the OE subscription, then that's feasible, do it that way. Even down to the point where you have unlimited tech support through us, so my master tech will actually remote into your laptop. He'll help you use that OE software. He'll help you he'll walk you through that programming. Okay. But there is a difference. Even if we're doing it that way, we're walking your technician through it. So your technician's involved in it. Okay. Where I get it. It's $125 for us to do it. Ford site's $40. But at the end of the day, where you're really saving money. Okay. Because if you have a technician on the vehicle for 2 hours, you're paying his hourly rate. You paid $40 for the subscription, or even if you're towing it to the dealer, the dealer's charging you a certain amount of money to program it. The tow truck's charging you a certain amount of money to get it there, so we're not really saving money at the end of the day. And again, I get a lot, it's easier for us to be able to just, send it to the dealer. I don't want to deal with the headache, but for your customers, it's a little bit of a headache too, right? I mean, first of all, even with the remote guys coming in and doing the programming, a lot of times they hear, well, how long does it take for your remote guy to get in there? Oh, well, he's pretty good. He's usually here within like 2 days or so. In some cases, I've heard where guys will actually stack cars for the entire week and the guy comes in one day. like on a Friday and just blows out all the programming. What's that doing for your customer? I mean, your customer's car is literally sitting there just waiting to be programmed, you know, or it's going to the dealer and you're adding another day onto your customer for that. You know, with us, look, you plug the tool into the vehicle, usually within the hour, we're in there doing the programming for you, okay? Now, you didn't have to wait for somebody to come in. You didn't have to have a tow truck come there. Your guy didn't have to sit there and do the programming and to really, you know, run through all the programming himself. You plugged the vehicle in, you walked away and worked on something else. You know, whether your guy's doing a brake job or something else, that car is doing a programming, you're making money somewhere else. You don't have your guy sitting on it, you know? And you marked the price up, $199 for the programming. You made 75 bucks on it, and you didn't have to touch the car, you know, and we took the liability. So with the Opus, with the IBS 360 and the Drive Pro ES, we could efficiently diagnose the problem the right way the first time, every time. So again, this is where, when we were designing this, we knew that shops needed help, right? And we have many different avenues of being able to do that. Even down to, we can share information with you guys. I mean, we can overlay things on the screen, you know, and I do look at this as training for a lot of your technicians. Even, you know, most shops have, you know, a couple of green technicians and, like I said, 1 or 2 master technicians. Now, when you have a green tech who is dealing with our technicians all the time, I look at this as every single time that they're on the phone with them, this is an education for them, right? This is a learning experience. First of all, if you guys have sent some of your technicians out for aftermarket training, there's a pretty good chance some of our guys have trained your guys. A lot of our technicians are trainers, so they have that trainer mentality, even when they're on the phone with the guys. I mean, they could go from, you know, our guys can talk to somebody who's extremely experienced out of a dealership down to the greenest guy who basically barely knows how to turn a wrench. You know, and because of their training backgrounds, these guys know how to work with these different levels of technicians to really help us, you know, to help the shop get along. Again, leave your master tech, let him make you the money. You know, if you got a guy who's green and, you know, say he's having a problem, we're diagnosing a bad module or something, and we tell him, oh, you know, you got to scope the module. And they don't know how to scope it. Say we walk them through scoping. You know, maybe he doesn't get the first time, the second time, the third time, but by the 4th, 5th time we're doing it with them, you know, next thing you know, that green tech is pulling out that scope on his own and he's scoping cars by himself, you know, and that's really ultimately our goal, is to help you guys be more efficient at what you're doing, you know, and for you guys to maintain these OE subscriptions and to maintain the tooling that you need and the expertise and the knowledge and the service information. It's very expensive, you know, and a lot of shops are already paying these high costs. You know, they have multiple avenues that they're trying to pull information from: wiring diagrams, service information, TSBs. And at the end of the day, if you actually sat there and figured out, you know, what you're paying per month for all of these subscriptions, even the ones that are yearly on tool updates and everything, you'll end up seeing that every month you're actually paying a lot of money for information. But that information that you're paying a lot of money for, you're burning a lot of your technicians' time for them to utilize a lot of that, right? So let us help you. You know, let our technicians give you the information. You know, these guys are out of the dealership. Sometimes they have shortcuts and different ways you could do things. I mean, just an example. I mean, like I said, I was in a shop yesterday. Guy had a Jaguar and it had some tranny lines that rubbed through on the subframe, and he could not find, and this is a 2010 Jaguar, it's nothing brand new. The guy couldn't find any service information on it. He found one thing online, and I don't want to say where it was from, but basically told him it was a 2-hour job. You know, I got the technician on the phone with him. The guy told him from start to finish the best way to take everything out, the way to put it in. He said it's a 4.5-hour job. He said if it's the first time you're doing it, it's a 5-hour job. You know, so this went from a technician who spent, and he told me he spent hours on the computer trying to research all this. He got bogus information, and it told him it was going to take him 2 hours to do it. But at the end of the day, he knew just by looking at it, this is not a 2-hour job. You know, but this is what we bring to the table for you technicians. And I don't care what kind of information it is that they're looking for or what kind of questions that they have. This is what we're there for. You know, we really do strive to be a service company. You know, that is what we do. That is our pride and joy. It is not, you know, us as a scan tool company. We're not out there trying to constantly push hardware on our customers. It is our customer retention that gives us the success that we have. And really, at the end of the day, that is our main goal. But, you know, again, at the end of the day, really what we're doing here is to really help you guys get more billable hours, right? And that's what it is about. And I kind of wanted to have this webinar to explain to some of our customers, because everybody gets really hung up on the capabilities, right? Tool capability. And that's what everybody's stuck on, because, I mean, really, when you're dealing with any kind of a scan tool company, that's all you really care about, you know, and we have a tremendous amount of capability. And it may not even be off the front end of the tool for the end user, you know, but the capabilities we have off the back end of the tool is tremendous. You know, and I try to explain to shops, and like I said earlier, I've actually put this into certain situations in shops, and I've proved to them that we can increase revenue in these shops. Now, I will tell you this. I mean, if you take this scan tool and you throw it in your shop and you treat it like another scan tool, everything I'm saying to you won't make sense until you actually start to utilize us and our guys, and you see some of the capabilities that we have, and it will start to make sense to you on how much we can help them with these vehicles. And even in some cases, we have beyond capability, even from what you guys would be getting on pass-through subscriptions, even for programming. You know, I mean, you start getting into some of these other manufacturers, and even if you're buying OE subscriptions to do it on a J2534 as a pass-through, you know, you still have limitations where a lot of those limitations kind of go away with us, where we can actually do more. And because we've been working very close with the OEs, and we're certified through a lot of the OEs, we've embedded ourselves with a couple of other people in the industry as well. You know, we're very big on LSID and locksmith licensing, which is something that we help our customers get because of the fact that we run into problems with component protected modules. You know, you guys start getting into some of these newer vehicles. This is a huge thing in the industry today, and it's something that a lot of people don't pay too much attention to, or they just think that it doesn't apply to them, or that, you know, it's still years away before they really need to worry about it. You know, and a lot of people are a little bit mistaken on exactly what an LSID or a locksmith license or to become NASDAQ certified really is. A lot of guys think, oh, you got to be sponsored by a locksmith. You know, it's really not what it is. It's a security check for your shop. They just want to make sure you're a legit shop, you know, and, you know, you're not a criminal chopping cars up or anything like that. Now, I've been stressing to shops when I'm in there, this is an extremely part for you guys right now, because a lot of what's happening in today is a lot of the programmings are now going to require LSID licensing. A lot of purchases of parts are going to require LSID licensing. I mean, we could touch even on Volkswagen Audi for a second. I mean, you look at their, you know, on Audis, you change the steering rack in these cars now, and they're component protected. You know, they're actually theft relevant. They hold the VIN number, and you have to be LSID certified to even be able to do a programming on a steering rack. That's how crazy things are getting these days. And yeah, if anybody on here has ever tried to purchase parts for Mercedes-Benz, or, you know, you're out there trying to purchase keys or certain component protected modules, you either have to send your customer down there to pick it up, or in some cases, the dealer won't even sell it to your actual customer. So it becomes a huge problem in the industry. And I can assure you that this is going to become more and more in the industry. And it starts back in, you know, 2010, you know, where you're seeing these cars start to come into the shops. You know, I have shops that have told me that they've never seen ADAS equipped cars. And I've literally been standing in a shop before when I get into ADAS and some of the calibrations and some of the different things that we can do for them. And they tell me, oh, well, I've never had an ADAS car in my shop. And there's literally an ADAS car sitting in front of me. I've been in a shop where there's a Honda sitting in front of me, and it's got 360 cameras on it. I mean, this is a fully equipped ADAS car with every option on it. And they're telling me that they've never seen one. You know, they don't even know that they literally have one sitting in their bay. So, you know, this is the type of education that we try to bring all the shops and help them run a little bit more efficient. So I think we're going to turn it over to some questions now. I think Chris is on here, and Chris wants to run through some questions that have been coming in. You know, and if anybody, okay.
Hey, Mike, how's it going?
Yes, I can hear you.
How's it going? All right, that was awesome stuff. And look, there's your shining face.
How are you?
All right, so we got a bunch of questions here. So let's start at the beginning. So you touched at the end on component protection. And that's actually a pretty good point. So we have a question here. So what's the difference between programming a component protected module versus a non-component protected module?
So really, a component protected module, you will need the LSID or NASDAQ certifications to be able to program it. You're going to need that locksmith certification. If it's not a component protected module, anyone is allowed to program that module. There is no restrictions on it. But yes, if again, this LSID, this NASDAQ, this is a big thing in the industry today, and it is something I urge shops definitely to get a hand on, because it's just going to be more and more. I mean, you're going to run into it more and more. We're going to be telling you more so than other, going into the future, that you have to be LSID certified to do a lot of these programming. So really, that's the difference.
Awesome. Now I heard you talking a lot about support and diagnostics and everything. Now let's say we have a question here. If a customer has a factory software, so can you help me diagnose the vehicle using our factory software?
Absolutely. Our technicians are actually, we have every tool there is under the sun. All of our technicians we purposely train them on all of these tools. And the main reason for that is, look, again, what I was saying was our whole point here, right, is to help you guys streamline things in the shop, help speed things up. So let's say you have a Drive ES in your shop and it's plugged into a Nissan and it's doing a programming, okay, and it's a 2-hour programming for a Nissan. Now you walk away from it. We're doing the programming on that. Now you run it to the next vehicle. You have an issue on it, or you got five guys in your bays, and the guy 3 bays over, he has an issue. Okay, we have a mobile app. You guys can download the mobile app. Any technician in the shop can have the mobile app. It's all signed under that shop's location, and they can actually, when you go into the app, you allow the app to access your camera. You go to the barcode in the door jamb, capture the barcode, to populate vehicle information for you, and you send them the ticket through the app. Now, when our technician calls you back, say, all right, well, what's your tool number? Let me remote into the tool. Actually, that tool is plugged into a Nissan doing a programming. No problem. What other tools do you have? And they will get on any tool that you have and help you diagnose the car, because we're not going to make you sit and wait till that tool is available. Like I said, at the end of the day, it is to help you guys streamline what it is you're doing. If we're using other equipment, factory software, other aftermarket equipment, we will help you guys use it. Now, with the factory software, I do have guys that have their own subscriptions, and we have no problem with our technicians going in there and helping them use it. These guys are from the factory. So if anyone knows that factory software better, it's the guy who's calling you back to help you with that car from our support center. He'll know that factory software inside and out. So I have seen it where we go into these, shop owners' own subscriptions, and we show them things they could do with their subscription that they didn't even know that they could do. So it's a huge help.
So good. So we had a question from Paul in the chat. He's a mobile tech, and he wants to know about remote programming. He's got a question about it. He wants to know: are you saying that we're doing remote programming vehicles as a third party?
Yeah, so the way it works is we actually have 2 different ways that we do programming. We have some server-based programming, meaning you guys would have unlimited access to it. We do have server-based programming for BMW, Mini, Land Rover, Jaguar. Actually, BMW and Mini is probably our most sought-after softwares. We have a tremendous amount of capability with it. Not only that, even on the newer F-chassis, G-chassis cars, we have individualization with module programming and coding, meaning you could program, you change on an F10, if you just change the DME, you could go in and only program the DME. The remote programming, like I said before, the way it works, we actually, in most cases, locally house that software on the back end of the tool. So what that means is a lot of other companies that do something similar to what we do, right? Remote programming. The way they do it is you plug their device into the vehicle. Usually their server or their dealer tool, whatever it is that they're using to do this programming, is there in the office with them. And what they're doing is they're using the internet as a huge extension cord all the way across the country, wherever you are, into that vehicle, and that's how they're programming it. Now, when you're doing it that way, anything goes wrong with the internet or any kind of glitches, you have the potential of completely bricking that car. The way we do it is we actually locally house it. So if our OE subscription or if whatever we're programming is loaded on the back end of our tool, when we're in that tool doing the programming for you, say something goes wrong with the internet, the only thing that we're losing is our team viewer into the tool. The car will still be doing its thing because we're locally housing it in your shop. Great.
So we have a question here from Mr. Wade Wilson, Deadpool himself. He wants to know, are these subcontractors or do they work directly for Opus? I believe he's referring to our support technicians on the phone.
They are all Opus employees. We do not, everybody who you are dealing with, they are Opus employees. Like I said, these are our factory trained technicians you're dealing with, even down to our wrap programmers. They are all trained technicians. They are Opus employees. We are not subbing it out to anybody else. Look, I'm here preaching to everybody to stop subletting things out. We're most certainly not subletting anything out.
That's awesome. Okay, so we got another question from Galen. I'm not going to butcher your last name. I apologize. He goes, we bought the tool. How much is the diagnostic fee?
So if you purchased the tool already, the way it works, we run on a monthly maintenance. We don't do yearly subscriptions or anything like that. So the way it works is you purchase the tool. The monthly maintenance is $299. That $299 does actually cover quite a bit. You don't look at it as the $299 is just not for diagnostics. It's for everything. So the $299 will cover all of the software updates, covers the hardware warranty, it extends the hardware warranty. It covers unlimited tech support, meaning you could call those guys as many times a day as you want. And it also covers our server-based programming. So for those car lines I mentioned before, BMW, Mini Cooper, Land Rover, Jaguar, you could actually program those cars unlimited, and there is no additional charges or fees for it. It's all a part of the subscription.
So we have another one. Johnny P. He actually has a problem. He goes, sometimes our Drive Pro will not connect the vehicles. It says no communication. Any advice?
So one of the things that I think that some people lack to mention to some of our customers, and it's definitely something I would love to bring up on here, is does he specify a year of the vehicle or anything like that?
I do not have any information other than
okay.
that.
All right. So one of the things that we run into is some of the early 2000 vehicles and OBD1 cars. And I'll explain to you guys why we run into the issue with them. So like I had mentioned before, we're using a different protocol in this tool even from our old legacy tools. This tool is actually talking through the CARDAC 3 internal. So it's a DOIP CARDAC 3, which is 4-channel CAN. So with that being said, a serial data vehicle, so if you have a vehicle that only communicates on serial data, there's a pretty good chance we will not be able to talk to that car, only because our protocol does not support it. And you're talking, 20, 18-year-old vehicles. If they even do have a CAN line in the vehicle, we can still talk to those vehicles. For instance, I would just hook to a 2000, I think it was a 2001 or 2002 Mini Cooper. That is a serial data vehicle, but it did have a CAN communication, so I was able to talk to the vehicle. So if he's talking, if he was referencing a vehicle that was older that we may not have communication to, that would definitely be the reason why. And in most cases, and the reason why we have the CARDAC 3 in there, and we're not too worried about the serial data cars, because we're more on the futuristic cars, right? So we're looking into the future. We've made this tool to be a little bit more future-proof than to worry so much about the older cars. You're talking early 2000s. There's not a whole lot communicating on those cars as it is, and most shops will have some kind of a cheaper scanner or something in their bays that will talk to these cars, and we will help them with that tool to diagnose those cars.
Great. So I have two clarifications or responses. We'll go with Johnny again. He was saying he's having issues connecting to different vehicles, new and old. What would you suggest for him to do for that? If he's having communication pretty much all around the board.
Well, if he's having communication issues, I'm quite curious to know what the problem is. The best case is, guys, especially if you're an existing customer, you have unlimited support. My best suggestion is to let one of us remote into the tool and see why you're having that connectivity issue. If you're not talking about a serial data vehicle, you should not be having these issues. And look, I'll be completely transparent with what it is, with everything that's going on here. We have had issues in the past. A lot of those issues have been resolved now. One of the biggest issues that we did resolve was connectivity issues. So it's very rare that we hear of people having these connectivity issues where they're having trouble reading the vehicles now. So if you are having the issue, I would most certainly suggest reaching out to somebody and let us actually get in and see what's going on. Unless there's more of a specific reason of why it's not communicating to that car.
That's good. That's good. So, Paul, again, you were responding to his question about remote programming. His questions was specifically about LSID. So he said, I asked if you were remote programming vehicles requiring an LSID with your LSID and the shop not having one. So how does the LSID piece work with remote programming?
So no, we're not using our own. We are LSID certified. We are NASDAQ certified, but we are using the shop's LSID and NASDAQ certifications. So like I said, we actually will help them go through the process of becoming certified. The way it'll work is we get a copy. We basically keep a copy of your certification on file. So you as a shop owner would contact us, let us know, okay, we got the certification. You give us we keep the certification on file. A note goes into your account that this certification has already been received from you guys. And then you don't get asked the question again, basically after that. We could just go ahead and do the programming, but it is the shop's LSID that we would be using.
Great, great. So Michael Sasso wants to know, can I call for repair procedures?
Absolutely, yeah. These technicians, like I said, we are not, and that's something that a lot of people get confused on. We are not just there for drivability issues. This is not just, engine drivetrain issues. I mean, a lot of what we do during the day and with the technicians is wiring issues, CAN communication issues. I mean, that's a huge part of what we do. There's a lot of confusion in the industry out there, really on some of these CAN networks. And, even on the newer vehicles, these high-speed CANs are becoming more difficult for some of these shops to work on. I mean, one thing that, you guys know in the past, with some of these slower CAN networks, you guys were able to do voltage references and these types of things to actually see if you have a good CAN network and things like that. Where in today's vehicles, these high-speed CANs are actually talking so fast that you cannot use these voltage references anymore. You actually have to, put a scope on and actually see what's going on. So, I mean, if you guys need help with, you need wiring diagrams, you need repair procedures, you need shop times, that is what we're there for. Again, I mean, we're trying to get your technician off of Google and off of all these other sites and wasting shop time doing all this research. And, contact us. Let us give you the information. You guys have to look at it like this. We do about 1,000 cars a day through our diagnostic center. So vehicles that you're getting into your bay, that's something you're seeing for the first time or a problem you've never seen or experienced before. There's a pretty good chance we've seen it multiple times that week, and we could get through the repair procedure pretty quickly. And to that question, just like I said before, that guy I was with the other day with that 2010 Jaguar, he couldn't find anything online about it, how to do the repair. All he found on there that it was a 2-hour repair procedure. And, and my tech got on the phone with him and told him, no, it's not 2 hours, it's 5 hours. And this is how you're going to do it. And he literally spent 20 minutes on the phone with this guy, walking him through how to do it. And this is a mechanical thing that he's doing. This has nothing to do with any kind of scan tool or anything like that. He was actually telling him the best ways to snake the lines and everything. It was very useful information.
Great. So we have a question from Mr. Mackey. He goes, my guys need help with their scoping, okay? Can your techs help them understand what they're seeing?
I think, Chris, you can help them understand what they're seeing. No, yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, this is something we do. I mean, if you guys can even go on our Opus IVS YouTube channel, I mean, we have literally done videos on scoping. We actually sell a Pico scope. We sell an Opus IVS branded Pico scope. So yeah, we are, we do offer Pico training. Like I said, we are there for whatever your shop needs are. Absolutely. Even to the point where if you guys have the scope hooked into a laptop, I mean, our guys, if you guys grant us permission to remote into the laptop, and these guys will remote into anything, they could be remote into the laptop and looking at the signals and what you're seeing with you.
Great. So we have a question about, so Michael Sasso asked, do I use the tech support icon on DrivePro for this info? I guess for tech support info he's asking.
Yeah, so like I said before, we do have the mobile app and we have the button on the DrivePro. We also do have other avenues through the website. If you actually went in through the Opus IVS website, you could throw in support tickets through there. Now, I will tell you this, either through the mobile app or through that support button on the DrivePro itself, that is the two fastest ways to get a response from us. Now, when you're doing it through the DrivePro, you actually even have the option, when you're choosing the way you want to be contacted, you can actually choose to be contacted through email. So say you do need some kind of a repair procedure or instructions or something, you could submit a ticket and say, you know what, just email it to me. I don't need a phone call. I don't need to talk to the technician. Just email it to me. So yeah, using that button is the best way to get any kind of information on the vehicle.
Great. So well, I think we have more of a statement, but I think we could actually help with this. Andrew Harvey is talking about working on getting Volkswagen and Audi software. Now, I happen to know, because that's kind of my bread and butter, that software is a pain in the butt to install. It is. Can we help with that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Chris, I think you can help them with that. No, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can help you guys. Like I said, I mean, these technicians are there for whatever. I mean, if you guys are running Otis on your own tool, you know, Rostec, whatever it is you guys are using, absolutely, we can help you guys use it. You know, and even with our programming capabilities, we can use it. You know, some of it's going to require you to have LSID licensing for us to be able to use our stuff with you guys. But, you know, if you have your own subscriptions, absolutely, we will help you with it.
Great. Do you want to talk at all about Scn Programming on Mercedes?
At the Scn Programming, so I mean, if you guys want to talk about subscriptions and stuff like that, I mean, you look at Mercedes-Benz, okay? If you're not, say you buy a pass-through subscription for Mercedes-Benz, yeah, you get the subscription. I think Mercedes raised their subscription price. I think it's close to like $3,000 a year now. It'll give you diagnostics, and it'll actually give you programming capability. The programming capability you're going to get off of that pass-through for Mercedes-Benz, though, is going to be engine and drivetrain only, and it's not going to include a lot of the Scn coding for any kind of body modules or anything like that. So we actually can do a lot of that programming off the back end of our tool, where we could do body modules and stuff like that. The only other way you could do it on a Mercedes, if you're trying to use your own tooling, is to have a full-on star tool, you know, a Zentry tool, which is about $28,000. So not really too feasible. I mean, unless you're seeing a lot of Mercedes in your shop, it's not too feasible to buy a $28,000 tool. But yeah, no, the Scn coding, it's a little bit different from some of the other manufacturers. I mean, you look at BMW coding, you know, that's kind of, you're commanding the car to code a certain module on its own. You know, you basically command that module to collect the vehicle information on its own, where on a Mercedes-Benz, the Scn coding is written by VIN. So it's actually like a build data for that vehicle that goes into that module. So
great. So let's keep on this Scn thing. Are we able to do the Scn coding with this tool, and what can and around what can we do?
Yeah, I mean, we can do Scn coding with the tool. There are some limitations to, as far as across the board with Mercedes-Benz, like airbag modules. I know that is something we do not like to remote out. We do a lot of Sprinter vans. We do a lot of the Scn coding of knock sensors and regens and stuff like that. You know, I know we have problems with the 221, 222 chassis. As far as speed goes, from what I understand, most of the time that is due to the shop's internet speed. Basically with those two chassis, because they like to talk so fast, unless you have really good internet in your shop, you can run into issues with those two chassis.
Great. So I think we pretty much touched on every one of the topics. We seem to got everything going there. I'm looking at the chat. I don't see anything coming in, so I think we got everything. Anything else you would like to sum up, Mike?
No, I think I'm good. You know, and again, I mean, you know, for anyone who's actually on here that is an existing customer already, people that already have the Drive Pro, you know, I kind of want to stress to you to really use us and, you know, utilize this tool, utilize what you have, utilize what you're paying for, because at the end of the day, I think that you're going to be, you know, because look, even shops, I go into existing customer shops. I mean, when I'm driving, when I'm all around the country, and I know that there's an existing customer in the area, I'll stop in just to do, you know, a check on them. Hey, how you doing? How's everything going? And a lot of times I'll start getting into capabilities with them, and they'll sit there and tell me, oh, I didn't know you could do that. I didn't know this. I didn't know that. I didn't know you had a mobile app. And, you know, so for anyone who's on here who's already using us, you know, really look into some of the stuff that we can do. Again, so many people just get hung up on that front end of the tool, and they just, it's a tool. Everyone just looks at us as a scan tool company, and it's the furthest thing from what we really are and what we're truly doing. So
great. So I think we kind of so Daniel Duckworth wants to go, how do we look into it? I guess so. He wants to know a little bit more. So how do we get how do we do?
The best way is really to email us at info.us.com. I mean, I'm sorry, info.us@opusivs.com.
Sorry, don't bother Mike. He's been on like 2 hours of sleep. He drove the entire night to go to this.
I'm on very little sleep. So basically, if you send us in the email, what'll happen is we'll create a lead for the sales rep in your area, and he will contact you. He can email you over some information. He can come into your shop and do a live demo. We even have the capability of doing virtual demos. You know, we could actually do life-size demos where I can be remoted into my own tool and show you guys what we could do remotely. So we have a lot of different ways we could do demos and kind of show you guys what we're doing.
Great. So it looks like we covered all the bases right here. Anything else? Anything else you want to talk about, or are we kind of done here?
I mean, unless we have any more questions coming in, I think we're good.
Looks like you caught everything. I think it's time to let Mike get some sleep.
No, really, everybody, I really do appreciate you coming on and spending some time with us. You know, I spend a lot of time on the road trying to get our message across of what it is that we do. And sometimes I just think it's, you know, a little bit unseen, everything that we do. And, you know, and I really do want to be a help in the industry. I mean, we really do have a lot of pride in it. This company has a lot of pride in it. We've spent the past 2 years expanding everything it is that we're doing. We've been acquiring other companies. We've been bringing on new engineering teams. We really have grown leaps and bounds in the past 2 years. And I mean, all I really have to say is, guys, just wait to see what else is coming.
All right, great. So with that, I'm going to say thanks for watching, everybody, and have a great night.
Thank you, guys. Take care.